explaining every single button inside of Ableton Part 1. I don't know how many parts this is going to be, but here we go. Okay, so first we have this, which turns on and off the browser view. And if you hit this button, you can also turn on the tuning and groove pool windows or make it full height, which means it takes up this bottom corner as well. Next up, we have tap. Now, if you don't know what tempo something is, you just click that on beat and it'll figure out what your tempo is. Up next, these numbers are your tempo. That's how many beats per minute your song is. And you can automate that to change throughout the song. The next two buttons are phase nudge up and down, which are these two here. Let's say you're playing something in Ableton, but you're syncing it to something outside of Ableton. Like, for example, a record. That record may have slight variations in tempo, and so in order to keep it synced up, you use those phase nudge buttons. So let's say my Ableton track is a little too far ahead, I'd do phase nudge down. And basically when I press it, it'll slightly slow down. And once I release it, it'll go back to normal. And same with the nudge up. So next, these two numbers are what measure you're in. So the first one is the amount of beats per bar, and the second one is the length of the beat. So let's say you put it into 3/4 with the metronome, it would sound like this. And speaking of the metronome, that's the next button. When you turn this on, you'll hear a little click that goes along as you play your song to help keep you in time. Now there is a drop down, so you can change the count in, the sound, or even the rhythm if you want like triplets or something like that. And you can set it to only be enabled when recording, which is a nice thing to have. So this next button is where you can set your quantization. That's basically helping to align your MIDI notes to the grid, and that's where you can set your global launch quantization. This next button is to show the notes in the key that you're in. So if I click it, it'll highlight the notes in my scale, whereas if I unclick it, it won't highlight them. And then the next two buttons let you choose your scale, so you have all the keys, major, minor, etc. Okay, so this next button is to follow the playhead. So if I have it selected and I hit play, will follow the playhead, whereas if I unselect it, it won't. Now these next three numbers aren't really buttons, they're just indicators of where your playhead is or is set to start at. Then we have the play button, which restarts every time you hit it, the stop button, which stops right where it is, and the record button. Okay, now this little plus sign is the MIDI arrangement overdub button. Basically, if I were to record on this MIDI track, it would replace these notes, but if I hit that button, instead of replacing them, it just sort of adds on top of them like this. The next button is the automation arm button. Basically, if I want to control something with a MIDI controller and have it record that automation, you select that and then hit record. For example, here you can see that the balance is connected to this knob. And when I hit record and move that around, it's making an automation with that. And that's it right there. Now, next button is this little arrow, which is the automation rearm. So say I move this and now that automation is turned off. Well, I can just hit that and it'll re-enable every automation. Next, that little square is capture MIDI. So say I'm playing and I play some notes and I forgot to hit record. I can just go here, hit that button, and it actually saved all those MIDI notes that I played. So next is the session record button. So that's for when you're in session mode and you want to record on one of these lanes. Next up, these three numbers are for looping. So they move this loop region around. This is the start point, and then this one is the length of the loop region. And now you have your punch in, loop, and punch out. So punch in, if you select it and hit record, it'll only start recording once it hits that line. And punch out is the same. It'll stop recording once it exits that region. And loop, if you want to just listen to one part of the track, you click this button and it'll just repeat what's inside of this region. The next button is this, and it's draw mode. Basically, if you're in a MIDI clip, you can just sort of draw all your notes around, and it'll just place a note wherever your mouse goes instead of having to double click and add notes that way. And the length of the note is whatever you pick here in the fixed grid. So if I do 16th notes, it's a 16th. And if I switch it to 8th notes, then it'll be 8th notes like that. So next, this button here turns your keyboard into a MIDI keyboard. So you can just use your keys to play notes. Key map mode here is if you want to toggle a certain thing with one of your keys, you just click that and then click whatever parameter and then hit a key on your keyboard and that'll toggle it with that key. So you can basically map anything anywhere. Now next you have these two little squares, which are indicators for when you have a MIDI controller sending a signal, like this knob here. That'll turn on. And next is the MIDI button, which is very similar to the key button where you can map anything to a MIDI controller. So say I do that, and as you can see, the volume is now controlled with this knob. Next up, this that says 44.1 is your sample rate, and you can change it in here, but I'm not going to go into that right now. This little percentage here is your CPU meter, which just monitors how much resources from your computer this is taking up. And if this becomes too much, this will turn on. This is the overload indicator. These two other squares, which are just for regular MIDI notes, they show if there's MIDI notes coming in or going out. And finally, this is how you switch between session and arrangement view. Okay, that was a really long video. I hope I didn't get anything wrong. If I did, please leave it in the comments and let me know what else you'd like to see. Thanks. Bye.